Triquetra, a sacred symbol that's been with us for 5,000 years. It shows up in ancient cultures all across the globe, time and time again. And although it may have different meaning to each culture, when you scrape down across the surface and get to the core of it, it's always the same. The Triquetra is a symbol of the mystical significance of the power of three. Welcome to part 2 of a Power of Three series, where Lynn, myself, and Kim talk about three sacred symbols. Now, the Triquetra, no matter how you draw it, no matter how you look at it, is a beautiful, beautiful flower. Whether it's on its own, whether it is with the addition of other symbols. It's always been recognized as a portal of creative energy. Right back to the beginning of time, in the center of the Triquetra is a triangle with curved edges. It represents a lens to the creative energy of the higher realm. A 5,000-year-old power flower. Now that's something. I can't go into 5,000 years of stories or cover everything, but I will show you how to draw the Triquetra in 3, maybe 4 different ways and talk about its history. Thank you for joining Kim and Lynn and myself on this great adventure and discovery and dive into the power of 3. Welcome to Power of 3 Part 2. And my name is Mary. And we also have Kim with us and Lynn.
Hi, everyone.
If you were with us last week, you would have seen Lynn's presentation of the sacred symbol, the triangle, and how it's a foundation of creation. And today, I'm going to be speaking to you about the Triquetra. And I have a little bit of it behind me here. The Triquetra is also known as a Trinity symbol. And I just thought we'd start today with maybe a little 3-corner breath. So I'm going to ask you all just to take a moment to relax, close your eyes, and we're going to inhale on the count of 3. We'll hold for the count of 3, and then we'll exhale for the count of 3. And we're going to do this 3 times. So closing your eyes, relax your shoulders. Be aware of any tension you might hold in your body and just let it go. And inhale, 2, 3, and hold, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3, and repeat. Inhale, hold, exhale. And one last time. Well, hello. I am actually thoroughly excited to be able to probably not introduce you to the Triquetra, but most likely, or hopefully, I will be able to introduce you to some new information about the Triquetra. I'm just looking for maybe you ladies can help me out. There should be a mute, just so we can block any noises. Well, we'll leave it off.
Everyone can mute themselves too. That's an easy
Yeah,
solution.
we can do that.
And that way,
Just if there's something going on in the environment, or if you have a dog or a cat
Sure.
or noisy husband,
Make sure if you have a question, unmute yourself, right? That's what you have
Absolutely.
to remember.
Unmute, jump up and down, dance, please. Okay, so a little bit of history on the Triquetra. It is actually one of the oldest sacred symbols in existence. It dates back, that we know of, to at least 500 BC. A lot of people think of it as a Celtic or pagan symbol, but it was also used by the Norse. And there is evidence of it in Japan, going back thousands of years. So it's really very interesting that this symbol has brought out, that we've been drawn to it as a race throughout time. And it's come to represent different things to different parts of humanity at different spaces in time. It can represent the three elements. Back in the Celtic days, it was known as Maiden, Mother, and Crone. It also represents air, water, and earth. And we have the Holy Holy Trinity based on the Christianity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It also represents past, present, and future, and protection, love, and honor. And a lot of times we'll see the Triquetra with a circle interlaced within. And a lot of people are very drawn to that. The circle represents the continuity of life and the infinite connection that we all have. So on a soulful level, we just feel this automatic draw to that shape and symbol. Now, there have been a lot of times throughout history where it's been used for other things as well. The Wiccans use it to represent the triple goddess of the moon in her three realms. Today, believe it or not, it also appears in medicine and science. It's called the tripod of life, and it represents our heart, our lungs, and our brain, which could, if you care to take it a step farther, represent our spirit, our body, and our mind. So it really is interwoven with our race as we've existed in the physical realm. And it does go back right to the beginning of creation. And I'm going to take you there today, step by step. And the first thing I think I'm going to do is show you 3 ways that you can draw the Triquetra. And you're going to have to excuse the little swivel. I'm just going to turn and face my easel. And here comes the tippy part. And I hope you can all see that. But it's funny, when I got really excited actually when Kim contacted myself and Lynn to come together to do something as the power of 3. And the more we explored the idea, the more connections we came up with between us, sacred symbols, geometry, art, spiritualism, everything. And the stronger the connection became, the more connections that became apparent. And Lynn's always connected with the symbol of the triangle. And if you were here last week, you enjoyed her host of the first part of this series. And this first drawing of the Triquetra is based on the triangle. So if we just form an equilateral triangle, I mean, you can always take out rulers and squares and try to get it perfect, but I just don't ever do that. And today we'll just be freehanding and creating an organic symbol. And once you have the equilateral triangle drawn facing downward, just place an X in the center with another X. If you can go up the distance between the inverted point and the center of the line, and create another, and then do the same from this point. And again. And once we have those points, you can start on one of them, and we're going to come down and connect to the other, and we're going to avoid going through the center X. And once there, we're going to connect to the third. And then we're going to bring it. Before I go any further, I just want to point out, once we have the first two lines drawn, the first two curves, we see the symbol for Christianity. It's just an interesting little fact. And then we're going to come it back up to the top. And there we have it, the Triquetra, or the Trinity knot. And this can be brought forward or played with, interlaced as many times as you like. If you're working with the Triquetra on a canvas and you've drawn it out in this way, you can leave the lines in, you can eliminate the lines, you can use them as another layer, incorporate them into another layer of your painting. But you'll also find, as you repeat the motion, an even stronger connection to the Triquetra. So it's probably the most fluid and easiest of the methods. And I'm going to show you another. And this one is also based on the triangle. The Triquetra actually does mean triangle. It's shaped with three, it means a shape with three corners, which is the description of triangle. So it's no surprise that the triangle appears so often in the Triquetra. So in the center, first thing I'm going to draw is a triangle, but instead of using straight edges that represent balance, I'm going to curve the edges of the triangle and create what is known as a pregnant triangle. Now, the pregnant triangle is said to represent a straight triangle about to give forth life or to bloom. So again, it's not surprising that when we build on this pregnant triangle, we create a bloom or a trillium known as the Triquetra. So parallel with one of the sides, you'd like another curved line. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create two more curved lines. So now we have another curved or pregnant triangle. And we'll do the same thing to each of the sides. And you can see it already starting to form. And then we're going to start interlacing. And there we have it. Another Triquetra drawn from the curved triangle outward. So our little curved or pregnant triangle has indeed just bloomed as a trillium or triquetra. And I just want to talk about the trillium for a minute. Triquetra is also known as the trillium. But the trillium itself, I don't know if you have trilliums where you live. It's a temperate zone flower. And it looks like this. It's a 3-petal flower with 3 leaves. And it's one of the earliest flowers in the spring to come out. And I've always, always loved the trillium. When I was a little girl, the first time I ever saw them in the forest, I picked a bunch of them and brought them home to my mother, where I very soon learned from my appalled father that it is, in Ontario, the province I live, illegal to pick trilliums because they represent our province. They're the province flower. And then he further went on to describe how they bloomed over 7 years. So a trillium, and this is just something to put in the back of our minds for now, the trillium flower here starts to grow in its first year, and it will grow a stem and 3 green leaves, and it repeats this cycle of life. And on the 7th year, it finally blooms a flower. So 7 years for a bloom. So indeed, I've never picked a trillium since, and they've crept up in my yard slowly through the years. I now have burgundy trilliums, white trilliums, and they do bring me a great deal of peace and enjoyment. Now, this is the 3rd aspect of drawing a trillium or a triquetra. One thing you'll notice about the triquetra, along with being triangles, the curved lines form a semicircle. So we've got the intersection of 3 curved circles. And we're going to use that in this next drawing. Hopefully you'll be able to see this, but if you cannot, but I've drawn 3 little X's, again, in the form of an equilateral triangle. And then I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to draw 3 semicircles from one to the other. These circles can be as deeply curved as you like, or as lightly curved. And again, you can just trace over the shape. And in this case, I'd like to bring those circles around just a little to show you another characteristic of the triquetra. The yellow's not showing up very well. I'll underscore it with some blue. But we find the triquetra in the center of the 3 rings. And the 3 rings you might recognize as making up another symbol. But before we get to that symbol, without going too deeply into sacred geometry, I did want to talk about the flower of life for just a moment. Now, the flower of life, I'm sure we're all familiar with, but in case someone who's watching this isn't, the flower of life is a symbol or a geometrical shape that has been, my goodness, it's been a part of us again. It's shown up time and time again. It dates back to the ancient Greeks and probably even before that. And it's been relied on as the geometric shape that contains all other geometric shapes. Architects in medieval or post-medieval times used it to create the shapes that they needed to build on. A lot of the ancient churches and castles you see are based on the geometry that's gifted to us through the flower of life. And the flower of life is the sacred shape that it's believed all of creation is based on, not just the buildings. So it's no surprise at all that this shape keeps coming back and throughout time. So we have the flower of life, and if you continue with the circles, it will continue on through infinity. But if you break down the flower of life, within the flower of life, you find the seed of life. And the seed of life are the first 7 circles drawn and interwoven, and they create the first flower. And from that, it grows and it gathers life and it creates. And if we were to break down the seed of life a little bit, and it starts to get even more interesting. Within the seed of life, we see Metatron's cube, the Merkaba, the hexagon, and a hexagram. The hexagram and hexagon were very basic shapes used in ancient structures before they had today's knowledge for architecture. And well, the Merkaba, you see in the pyramids. So within the seed of life, we also have the other sacred geometrical shapes from which life is built. And then I'm going to break that down just one more little bit. From the seed of life, we're going to go right back to the beginning of creation. The very first sacred symbol, the circle. So it is believed that on day 1 of creation, there was the circle. On day 2, we have 2 circles overlapping, and it gives us viscous pieces. I never know if I'm pronouncing that right. Lynn, maybe you can jump in on that one. But even if we just look at the simple form of 2 circles joining, it brings you back to what we know in science as the single cell being. The first form of life on Earth was the amoeba, which was a single circle within itself. And the second step to life was when this amoeba decided to replicate itself. And it did so by splitting and forming this. So it goes through not just spiritual belief, not just all of our mythical and religious beliefs, it's also in science. So we have it on all realms, spiritual realm, the physical realm, and so forth. And then we get to day 3. And this is what is known as the tripod of life. And if we look again at the tripod of life, it comes up again through history and right to today. And doctors and scientists call the tripod of life our brain, our lungs, and our heart, or our circulatory system, our respiratory system, and our brain functions. And without that, there is no life. If you remove one of those, we no longer exist in the physical realm. Not at all. And if you look within our day 3 of creation, you of course find, right, tribe? Triquetra, right in the center. So I like to think of the Triquetra as the first bloom on the flower of life, because it is the very first indication that a flower is evolving. And then we go on to day 4, 5, and on the 7th day, the first flower of life is created. From this, all others are born. And it goes on through infinity. And it shows us how we are all connected. And the reason why we, as mankind, as a human race, keep coming back to this is it provides us with comfort. It provides us with the knowledge that we are connected. We talk about how each of us in our physical life reach out and strive for connection. We want to meet that person, or we want to meet that family. We need to connect with our friends, with our tribes. We want to connect with outer space. We just, as a human race, are always seeking connection. And when we decide to look into the flower of life, we find all of that connection. And it's a reminder. I think it's a spiritual reminder. It's ourselves reminding ourselves on a spiritual level that we are already interconnected. We cannot be, we cannot exist, we cannot be in any realm, spiritual or physical, any dimension, without being connected. And whether we choose to recognize that and to feel that and to bring that into our life is up to each one of us. So that's a little bit about the Triquetra. The way I like to introduce, I bring it into my life and incorporate into everything I do, because it really is the first bloom in the flower of life. And I find it's fantastic as a meditation, as a yantra. If you ever have a day when you're feeling overwhelm or anxiety, you don't have to think about all the ways that we're connected or all the ways that our own feminine and masculine energy need to balance with one another. If we just return back to the Triquetra for a short time, it's already interwoven. It already exists. It's already there. And it's so simple. We can stop for a moment. We can try a 3-corner breath. We can picture the Triquetra in our mind and follow its rhythm and its flow and its shape, and find ourselves opening back up to life itself, to recentering, to regrouping. And it can bring us such comfort and peace in times where we are experiencing anxiety and chaos, or if we just question ourselves. It just puts us back into the center of the seed of life, which is the center of the flower of life, and reminds us that, yes, we are all created and connected equally. And there's one other way to draw, one of my favorite symbols, and I haven't brought this forward to anyone. It doesn't always work for me. So I'm going to give it a shot right here, live. Bear with me. I hope it works. You can try this at home. You don't have to worry about not trying this at home. But I really am. I have to focus. So I'm going to take you back to the easel for a minute. And this gives me a little giggle, and I'll talk about that afterwards. But I do truly love, I'm sorry, I'm trying to move the screen so it doesn't really bother you. All right, I'm going to do this in red. Bear with me, here we go. Okay, warming up. I'm going to find the center of the page, and I'm going to draw another inverted triangle, equilateral. It's pretty close. I'm going to go back to one of the points, and the distance that this point is from the base, so from the peak to the base, I'm going to create a dot. I'm just going to place a dot on the paper, forming a straight line. And then I'm going to do it again. From this dot, the equal space again, staying on that line. And then I'm going to go back and try doing that with each of the sides. So from this peak to this base, and then I'll duplicate that distance with a dot, and then I'll do it again. And then once more. And with a dot. And this is the part that gives me cause to giggle. Or awe, I'm not sure. I think I'm just in such awe that it makes me giggle. Well, we're going to come out from this point, and we're going to curve our way up to the top. And then we're going to go to the other point and curve our way to the top point here. And from here, we're going to repeat that action. And we've just drawn the base form of a triquetra, as well as the triple spiral. So we've started with the shape that Lynn introduced us to, the triangle. And in forming the triquetra, we've also begun the formation of a triple spiral. If we wanted to continue the spiral, I'm only going to do this lightly in pink, and I hope it shows up. You would bring it in full circle back around to that first dot, and again into the center. And repeat that for each of the arms. But today we're doing the triquetra, so I'm going to continue with that. But that was just a little something I thought you'd like to see, Kim. And once we have these three arms drawn, we're going to go back to the center of this curve in line with this one, more or less. Draw through it. It's not very good, but you get the picture. And then we're going to do it again. And then we're going to do it once more. I think you can see the triquetra starting to form here. So now we're going to connect these two spaces. So the base of our second dot here to a new base of our second dot here. And we're going to bring this around. So now we've used the triquetra to magically connect the three sacred symbols that Lynn, Kim, and I have been so blessed to present to you. Not the prettiest trinity I've ever drawn. I think, like with anything, the perfection is in the imperfection. And I can't wait to introduce this to canvases. But just returning to the energy of this symbol is so simple. And then if we want to really remind ourselves, we can draw I'm not even going to attempt a full circle sideways here. But definitely we can interconnect a circle within this framework.
Mary,
Yes.
I hate to be a pain, but could you just really quickly draw the triangle and where the dots went again? Because I missed the dot part and I really want to learn how to draw it that way. It's beautiful.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I love doing it again. The more often you do this one, it is so confusing. I remember the very first time I tried to draw it like this. Honestly, I don't even know what it looked like when it was done. It took me three tries before I got something that looked like the Triquetra. Okay. So the first thing we do is draw an inverted equilateral triangle. So we need a triangle that has 3 equal sides pointing downward. From the triangle, we're going to choose peak, and the distance from the peak to the base will be repeated, and we'll place a dot. So the distance from this base to the dot is the same from this peak to the base. And then we're going to do it again. So now we have 3 spaces that are equal in distance. And then we'll go back and we'll repeat this for each of the other 2 sides. And I'll let you call this, Kathy, whenever you're ready. Just let me know and I'll continue to the next step.
I'm ready.
Okay. So we'll choose a peak and go clockwise. So you're moving to your right. Beautiful. Yes. And we'll just draw a curved line up to the top. Dot, and then we'll do the same thing again. We're going out to the dot that's furthest from the edge. So we have an inverted triangle with 3 curved arms moving out. Love it. And then going back to our middle dot for measurement, we're going to draw a curved line that goes through the middle dot, and it'll come out and stop just in a straight line with the next set of dots. So from here, up to there. Then we're going to take our next dot, and it helps if you have the ability or the space to turn your surface. Then you're just repeating the same movement. This reminds me, I don't know, I'm going to be dating myself right here, but when I was younger, we had a big hi-fi stereo, and the only 2 records you could get were 33 or 45. And you used to buy the little plastic inserts to put in your 45 so you could play.
I remember that.
Yeah, here you go. It just looks exactly like that.
A little hole in the middle. Yeah.
Exactly, with that hole in the middle. And then we're just going to connect. We're going to continue this out to here. I think it's a little easier to see because we're starting to form the Triquetra. And then we'll bring this peak down to here. And we'll do the same with this line into the next. And then the outside line into the connection. And then we'll do the same on the final.
I love the way that works, Mary. Mine looks more like a pretzel, but I'm getting the hang of it.
Oh, look, Lynn, that's beautiful.
Oh yeah. Well,
Lynn,
hi.
that's
Look at
perfect.
mine. I'm
Oh.
confused. I'll come back to the recording. I'm gonna have to work on this one.
That's okay, right?
Kim, I said the same thing when I was making mine. I really want a pretzel now.
Yeah, it just like one of those big Belgian pretzels with mustard, yummy, right? Or German, whatever one, but yeah.
So delicious.
Well, I love this exercise, Mary. I'm going to use this one over and over again. I left a small little pencil example at the bottom just with the inverted triangle and the dots so that I can remember how to do it. So I didn't finish that one. I just left the dots like that. So I'm going to be using this one over and over again. Thank you so much.
Me
Oh,
too.
That's a great idea.
And
Yeah.
it is, I hope you've received some of the benefits from the
Oh, yeah.
When my life gets chaotic, I do stop and I do take 3 breaths and I really do picture this and I just keep going over, those 3 curved lines in my mind. And I just remember that nothing really matters, nothing in the past. And I think probably one of my favorite representations of this is the present, past, and the future, because although they're all interconnected, it is the center of now that really matters. The rest takes care of itself. It's just takes care of itself. And there we go.
Yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Now I want to make jewelry. That looks like a beautiful necklace.
it does,
Oh,
doesn't it? That's cool. I like it.
Love that. If any of us are jewelry makers, but that would be great if you did make a piece like that. I'm in.
That would be.
I like silver. Just saying.
You're like, just so you know, I like silver, right? That's
Put it out there. Like silver. Now, I don't know if there's anything I forgot to mention or not. I'll leave the floor open if anybody wants to contribute something or ask questions.
I loved what you were saying about the symbol and how it's reaching throughout all time. I think as souls, we've left a map for our future selves and our past selves to remember, what we came here to do and what we came here to accomplish through these symbols. And when I was reading the oracle cards before we started this session today, when I opened it up, I love what it says at the front of this book. It says, before there was time, before there was language, there were sacred symbols.
Wow.
There was. Right to the circle. I mean, the circle is the mother of the symbols. And then from all of that, others were born. And the circle itself is infinity. And there is no beginning, there is no end. There's no first, there's no last. And I think realizing that we're all of this, that creation itself, I mean, like, looking back, science can bring us the amoeba and say this is the first living being in the physical realm on this planet. And it was from the amoeba that all other physical beings came forth. And what was an amoeba? It was a circle, a single cell, and then it split. So we really do on some level remember our map. I like that, Lynn, very much. As beings, we come forth into this physical realm and we decide to experience all of these things as a human being, but we are made of this, and this is our roadmap, our blueprint. And I think the experiences that we're meant to have here are all based on that. It's total harmony, balance, connectivity. And without those in our lives, we can't have the rest. If you take away one portion of the tripod, it just falls.
And I love that too, that when you take the divine feminine and the woman's egg, right? And then you take the male and you create the the Merkaba, right? Then
Yeah.
you have the egg, which is the circle. When it joins with the sperm, then you have the first division of cells, which is the same symbol, right? And then it just creates the flower of life. So not only is it within yourself, but think about all the planets are circles, everything circles. So that whole connection is, like you say, from outside the body, one-celled amoebas,
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah, microcosm and the macrocosm, you know, it's this huge fractal that just keeps expanding and expanding. Yeah.
And it has
So
no.
beautiful.
And if we need a reminder, I mean, it's not just within ourselves, it's not just within the human creation, it's in all of creation. If we start looking at nature, it's all there. All of these symbols are right there for us, to remind us of where we came from and where we're going and why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. It's life becomes a lot less scary once we realize and start to receive all of that energy into our life, and our experience here now just becomes fun and loving and exciting. Great. And it's a beautiful adventure. And it all starts with a circle.
It all starts with a circle. That's right.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary. That was beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Does
And
anyone have any questions or would like to share anything with Mary and us that they've learned, or an observation or something they'd like to discuss around the symbol? Yeah.
okay. Well, then I guess we'll go back to the beginning and press the little circle that stops recording. And bid you all adieu. Thank you again for joining us in part 2 of this 3-part series, The Power of 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.